Hello and welcome to the Arrow Panel. It's a dance game discussion show where we discuss dance games. I'm your co-host, Dalton Runberg, at RunDaltonRun on Twitter, aka Blue Chows.
Omid Farmer, aka Demo, aka at BroMead on Twitter.
And I'm Buzzard, aka James, aka at Buzzard on Twitter.
I'm Roger Clark, at Roger Clark on Twitter.
And later in the show, we have a very special guest, Mr. Kyle Ward.
Ooh.
Mr. Call, Mr. Oscillator X, Mr. Smiley, Mr.
He goes by many names. Inspector K.
Inspector K,
So,
wow.
We'll have that special
Throwbacks.
treat for you later, but...
He's going to be discussing his game StepManiaX, which is one of the new dance games on the scene.
Yeah, among some other topics. But first, we want to run through some new DDR content. Just going to run through it pretty quickly here. A couple new idol songs, Tokameki idol songs. There's Sun Squared Summer Step. It's an Expert 11. Smiling Passion, Expert 12. I played them both yesterday. They're pretty fun. It's an 11 and 12. But one of the more hype announcements, I guess, was Vanquish the Ghost, which is a really cool new Expert 15.
Yeah, it's
extra
awesome.
exclusive song.
It's Monkey Business Jr.
Yeah, that's how a lot of people are referring to it. So
Yeah, it's got a cool slowdown in the middle, and
there's a couple slowdowns.
couple
actually.
slowdowns, I guess.
Yeah.
It's a cool song, very awesome song by Tag. So everybody was really hyped to see that. There was a great community response. So if you haven't gotten to the arcade yet to go play it, it's been out for a while now. But go give it a shot.
He's staring at me while he says this because I haven't played in a month and a half.
Yeah.
Well, you better go, because we got even more stuff happening.
Oh
we
my
got
God.
We got the
Even
new
more?
BEMANI Summer Greetings event, which is going on, and that's like a ton of different songs.
Yeah, so there's a total of 7 new songs in this event.
Do you?
If you kind of remember from the Triple Counter event, which was I don't remember the
Like
title
last
of it.
summer?
I don't know what it was
I
called.
don't know.
Yeah, but you had to play a set of songs starting on beginner and then difficult, then expert
It
to
was
unlock
basic,
them.
difficult, expert.
Yeah, sorry,
Yeah.
basic, not beginner. And so once you do all those, then you would unlock Triple Counter. So this is similar to that in that there's 6 songs, and once you play through them all, you unlock Prey. So just running through them really quickly here, there's Japanese song, something about a constellation song. It's a DJ Toto song, Expert 13. I really love this song.
Yeah, it's really good.
Just the song, even the steps are good too, but I really like the song. Puberty Dysthymia.
A new Expert 17.
Yeah.
Is it really hard?
It's Jumps the 17.
Yeah.
Ooh, wow.
And yeah, it starts
like
off
tell?
Felmo.
Oh,
Yeah,
those
It's
jumps.
210 BPM.
Wow.
Yeah. So
that seems hard.
and it starts off on a slowdown, and then there's a very small slowdown in the middle,
It's like-
very gradual.
It's like one beat.
yeah. It's a pretty tricky 17.
Yeah.
Has this artist been in DDR before?
I think it's just it's by Person 09 is what they go
Yeah.
by, but
I think it's a Sound Voltex artist.
Okay.
it's got to be. I don't know.
What's
And-
like what would you say is the genre of the music?
It's rock.
Okay.
It's kind of rockish,
Okay,
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's puberty dysthymia. It's a pretty weird name.
Yeah.
Dysthymia is kind of like a mild depressive disorder. So I think kind of a mild depression around being a teenager is
Yeah.
kind of what drove us all to play DDR in the first place.
Yeah.
So
It just comes full circle every time.
Yeah. Kind of been abbreviating it to, I got, Chris got 12 on puberty, which is not a great way to shorten it. So I think,
PD.
yeah, I'm making a motion to just refer to it as dysthymia here.
But hey, on the same topic, another new song, Life is Beautiful.
Life is...
we can just shorten it to pube.
let's not.
Yeah.
So,
After puberty, then you get to Life is Beautiful.
yeah,
See?
Yeah,
Make it through puberty, depression.
Life is Beautiful, aka Llamas is Beautiful, because there's llamas on the song jacket.
It looks like a Christmas sweater.
Llamas are
the
cute.
jacket.
It's, Nekomata Master
From
song.
the desert.
From the desert.
It's an Expert 16. It's pretty straightforward.
So-
155 BPM. It's on the lower end of the 16s, I think everybody would say.
Yeah, it's a 16.0.
Yeah.
No BPM changes at all.
Nope.
No.
Nice.
It's
Very straightforward.
Yeah, it has some pretty straightforward.
Is it
pattern.
easier or harder than Awake?
Easier.
It's
Wow.
much easier.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Roger got 3 on it today, and I got 4 on it. Sorry, 3 perfects, and I got
Yeah.
4 perfects on it yesterday. So,
Cool.
and Chris and Jeff already MFC'd
MFC'd
it for 16. So it's It's on the lower end of
Actually,
16s.
easier than Awake. I'm not so sure about that.
It
It's
is.
way easier than
it's
Awake.
slower.
But it has some parts like where it's freeze and then you have to
Dude,
turn around.
Awake
No,
has
just- we actually played it. It's easier than Awake.
Awake is like 180 BPM, has a bunch of 16th note runs in it and stuff.
And it has like foot switches at the end. No, it's much easier than Awake, trust me.
Cool.
And then there's Super Summer Sale, which is a U1 Overground song. It's a Expert 15. It is a weird song.
Yeah.
But,
Musically?
Yeah, musically it's weird. The chart is weird, but like in a good way.
Yeah.
Like it just feels kind of uncomfortable, but like not awkward. I don't know. It's hard to describe.
There are a lot of 15s like that.
Yeah. So I mean I think it's pretty fun. It's
Yeah,
challenging.
I think it's really fun.
It kind of does some different things that you don't really see a lot. But it just feels like you're always on your toes, not literally while playing it, maybe literally. But yeah, so that's a fun one. There's a new Expert 10 called another Japanese title, but it's Wind Bell Fireworks, or at least that's what Google Translate told me.
Yeah, I see the fire kanji in there. I don't know the other ones.
Yeah, so we're gonna go with Wind Bell Fireworks. It's an Expert 10. Then there's Rejoin, which is by Humor? Hummer?
Someone said Huser the other day. I thought it was humor, but I think it's Huser.
Sigma, isn't it?
The same
It's
the
like,
same
Isn't
person
that a Sigma?
who
It
made
is.
Neutrino, right?
featuring Pawn.
I
It's
think
got
so,
Pawn.
yeah.
Yeah,
it
featuring
is.
Pawn.
Neutrino artist. Good job. You
Yeah.
made another hit.
It's Expert 13. Also pretty fun chart.
It doesn't sound anything like Neutrino, though.
Yeah, no, it's completely different, and because it has Pawn, it has lyrics in it. They're kind of strange lyrics. Did you get a chance to play this one, Roger?
I played it on
Straight
basic.
lyrics.
Oh, in MFC?
I got a great.
Oh, you got great. Well, yeah, I gave it a shot last night. I played 80 songs in a row I locked all the songs
That's
last
crazy.
night, which I think this is the most Ace I've ever played in a day. Let us know what your record for like number of games in a day is.
Oh, I would love to hear
But
that.
for me,
Yeah.
playing like 20 games in a day was exhausting.
That's a lot.
So
It's a lot.
let us know
You
about
said
that.
5 hours, right?
And
hours straight.
to top it all off, we got Prey, which is the
Challenge 19? Oh, sorry.
the
the
challenge.
Expert 18.
So the Expert 18.
Gotcha.
And people are theorizing that it will have a Challenge 19 because so far every Expert 18 has had a Challenge 19.
Based on the music, you think it should have a Challenge 19?
Oh, absolutely.
Cool.
It could easily. Right now, it's 210 BPM. No BPM changes. No crossovers. There's just some streams at the beginning. Some kind of weird gallop things.
No crossovers? In
Yeah,
18?
I don't think there's
None.
No,
That doesn't make any sense to me.
it's a very straightforward. I mean, it's if you're good at foot speed kind of stuff, like it's a really easy 18. But I'm curious how sort of newer players who haven't played a lot of stuff in that range. I think we were actually just talking about this of how there's not
Yeah.
a lot of charts
I
of this
remember that.
type.
Yeah. I mean, personally, I didn't play a whole lot of ITG, and I played it, and it seems straightforward to me. But I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah.
I personally really like those kinds of charts because I played before I like stopped playing for a while and focused on StepManiaX. I played which one's the 16 and 18 triple journey or triple counter?
Triple journey.
The 16 I got like 13 or 14 perfects on. I think like that kind of foot speed is like really really fun. So, like,
Yeah. So if you want to warm up for Prey, play Triple Journey.
yeah, great, cool.
Yeah.
I'm excited
It's
to check it out.
a little bit slower, but yeah. Really,
Cool.
really interesting.
A lot of new songs.
It adds a new sort of skill to test, and really, there's not a lot of other songs in the game where you can practice like kind of foot speed just by itself.
Yeah.
It's stuff like Endymion or Egoism that has a lot of other stuff going on
Yeah,
in
it's
it.
just it's
So-
hard in like
Being
8
able to
different
read.
ways instead
Yeah.
of one.
Yeah,
You have to be able
so
to read also.
yeah,
Yeah,
changes
you
and
just
stuff.
have to be
So
able to do that.
take the time to go play these songs. They're all really fun. They're really cool songs. They offer, there's everything from a 10 to an 18 on Expert here. So there's something for everybody.
And you have to play all the basic and difficult charts too, and there's a lot of good stuff in there.
Yeah.
And this is something that I've noticed a lot happening lately is some players have been kind of migrating and playing some of the difficult and basic charts. It's if you want to get better at timing, go do that. It's a great way of getting better at timing.
Yeah, no, I mean, even just yesterday, I noticed my MA was so much better. And I think a lot of that was actually going and playing these basic and difficult charts of things that, it wasn't just going to the arcade and starting at 15s and going up, like actually playing easier songs.
Plus, you're also familiarizing yourself with the song and the sync, like without actually having to try that hard to read it.
Yeah. So, yeah, lots of new content in
Cool.
DDR.
I should play DDR again.
Yeah, you should. If you've kind of fallen off the wagon, which I don't know why you'd still be listening to the show.
Omi hasn't been playing DDR because you've been playing StepManiaX.
Well, and like we'll find out, like I think the person behind StepManiaX is like just super inspiring and like fun to support, and I've gotten hundreds of hours of enjoyment out of my machine, and I think that other people will once they get theirs too.
And we should have a discussion with him at some point.
So let's
kick it over to us.
Yeah, talking to Kyle Ward.
All right, everyone. Tonight on the Aero panel, we are honored to have none other than Kyle Ward on the show. And Kyle, I think I'd like you to kind of tell us a little bbit about yourself. All I'll say is you're responsible for so many fond memories in my childhood.
Me as well.
Thank you for that. And yeah, I'll let you go ahead and introduce some of the stuff maybe you've worked on in the past, who you are, and maybe what you hope to get out of being on the show tonight.
Sure, absolutely. So my name is Kyle Ward. I'm the founder and CEO of Step Revolution. I've done a lot of different projects, but let's see. So obviously I was involved with the original In the Groove team. I worked on Pump It Up Pro with Fun in Motion. I worked on iDance 2 with Positive Gaming. We produced ReRave with Step Evolution, and then also ReRave Plus with Step Revolution. It's a little confusing. To tell you the truth, I forget about who I am these days too, but I like music games, I like dance games, and I'm just as much of a player as anybody else, but I also just love trying to make new products and getting them out to the market where I see, obviously where people aren't doing it. So I like to help with that at least. So
yeah, we'd love to go into a deeper dive of history because all of us we were all like super huge In the Groove fans.
Yeah.
And so we'd love to hear like kind of the genesis story of In the Groove. Like how did you get involved with the project? And how did it all start?
Or just, your general history with music games.
Yeah.
You don't have to start with ITG.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, well, actually, that's a good place to start. So,
yeah,
I originally came in contact with Dance Dance Revolution, obviously, a long time ago. It's kind of funny when I think about it. I was heavy in the LAN party scene, and I did a lot of first-person shooters. But at the time, a lot of people were sort of playing underground DDR at the time. They were using wooden pads, and at the time, I didn't actually know what it was. And when I saw it, I was intrigued by it, but I was also sort of like, I didn't know if it was something that I could do. So I didn't really take it seriously.
Your first exposure wasn't at the arcade then? It was at a LAN party?
No, actually, yeah. To tell you the truth, when I think about it, and a lot of times, I tell people the arcade first, which I would say that's my main experience with it. But no, I actually saw sort of the underground scene sort of develop, all the way back to something called Delight Reduplication, which is a very old.
I'm familiar with that.
I totally remember that.
Yeah, and so, I mean, I saw it at the time, and, I never tried it, but I was always intrigued by it. But I'd say where I really came in contact with it was when I was going to school up in Seattle, and I frequented GameWorks. And at the time, GameWorks was a really great arcade, a really great location, and I just loved going there with friends and everything. And they had a DDR third mix and a DDR USA, and that was actually my first experience with the game. I tried it. I think I tried USA first. It was a solid 14 songs, so there wasn't a lot to try. But I started on beginner just like everybody else. And really what pulled me into it was the music. I just really loved the music in the game. And so I started playing it. And sure enough, I started getting the time cards, like 2-hour time cards to basically play it almost nonstop, constantly, almost every day after school. I just fell in love with it, and I fell in love with third mix and USA equally, and it sort of inspired me, I guess, to just really know that I love this concept, and I'm blown away by it, and I think it's fun for a lot of people, and and ever since then too, I obviously graduated all the other mixes like fourth mix and fifth mix and Max. I remember everything about the history at the time. In Seattle, actually, there was quite a big scene for it. We were all really close up there, and to make it even more funny, I actually, as soon as I started getting somewhat good at the game, I stopped playing singles and I would only play doubles. And I just really enjoyed, using two pads at once. And I think it originally started because I just liked creating attention.
It looks way more impressive.
It does look way more impressive.
It does, but it's also just more fun because back in the day, I really liked the patterns and I liked the movement. And it's funny, a lot of the people, when they would have tournaments, at different arcades and everything, I would always elect to not actually go to the tournament, and I would go where the tournament wasn't so that I could use the machine more often.
See, now you just sound like Chris for life. I'm just kidding, Chris. I'm just kidding.
I mean, it's a perfectly reasonable course of action. Yeah. I'm glad to hear that you started on third mix. That's where I started too, and I think that's...
Oh, this is such a great mix. I mean, there are so many, hours of entertainment could be done with that mix, and it just never got old. It was so much fun, really.
What was your favorite song from third mix?
Oh man, I knew you were going to ask that, and it's always hard. Yeah, it's always hard because do you like the song for the steps or do you like it for the song? And for me, I always, I would stomach through bad steps just because I liked the song, and I was always like super addicted to that bubblegum pop stuff. So I really liked, like I liked Smile Decay, I liked Miss Papaya. I liked actually a lot of the music from third mix. I remember the song list just in my head as we're talking about it. I mean, I liked like pretty much all the songs that were in it. There was only like maybe 3 or 4 that I never really liked playing, but I mean, I loved entering the code for SSR.
And,
like back in the day, it's just and the Space Needle, they also had a third mix, and I eventually, I actually learned to appreciate fourth mix more afterwards, just because I liked the amount of songs, and I didn't like the interface, but I liked the amount of music that was in that machine more, which that was at a mall locally, which I believe became Round 1 in Seattle now today.
Oh,
that's awesome.
That's a wonderful fate.
So speaking of the music in the game, were you making your own music at this point? Were you kind of inspired by DDR to start making music, or had you already been making stuff before that?
Yeah, no, I started making music actually before playing DDR, but I would say that my interest obviously was in line with that because I always liked electronic music, and sort of, if you go back to the 90s period, I really liked like the Euro dance, the Euro trance, and really that sound of the period. The late 90s and early 2000s, I still think today are some of the best, music, because it's just so, when you listen to it, it's just so different. So many songs can sound, it's not like the same type of sound. It's like so many producers at the time were doing different things, and I just thought all the songs had a really cool essence to them, and so that's kind of what got me into electronic music and sort of doing it as a hobby. And as I was going to school, I actually went to school for video production, and I really didn't expect to do anything with music at all. It was more just a hobby at that point, and I had fun just making songs on the side, and I always had sort of a passion for music, but my schooling was really in sort of video production and media arts. And so it all sort of blended together, though, because with the Art Institute, it all really sort of becomes digital media today. So,
which is what I went to school for.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, producing a video is not that different from producing a song, right? You put stuff, in order, and there's various tracks and such. It's like, I think producing anything is like producing anything else, if you really think about it.
Yep. I mean, it's, especially when you start talking about like, nonlinear edit. At the time, nonlinear editing was such a big deal for people, and they were still teaching us how to do linear editing too, with the tapes and everything. And it's still valuable to know sort of how that stuff works and sort of the origin of it, I guess. But it all certainly relates. And when anyone talks about doing anything media related today, it's all intertwined. And whether it's YouTube, Facebook, streaming, it all relates, just like what you guys are doing here with this podcast too. So I mean,
So Kyle, I want to fast forward to In the Groove, since it is like where I think all of us probably started hearing about who you were. So I know StepMania was already, we can skip like the StepMania history. I think that's probably a whole other podcast. I think once StepMania was established, what kind of paved the way for In the Groove? Was it like a lot of the same people who built StepMania getting together, deciding they wanted to make some kind of arcade solution? Was it like something you saw that was missing from DDR that made you want to like pursue that? Tell us more about like the concept of ITG and kind of,
how it came,
goals.
How
yes.
how did it even happen,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah, for
like
sure.
a personal story with you and Chris Danford
yeah.
and people like that.
So, I mean, that's, going right into that, I sort of came into it because Chris and I were friends. Chris at the time was going to University of Washington. I was going to the Art Institute. And I started, talking to him on and off. And we would get together and actually play DDR all the time. We'd do, we'd play Third Mix. And there, Alderwood Mall, probably up in Seattle, was one of the places we'd love to go. It had a Fourth Mix machine up there. And I would always bribe the arcade attendants to turn up the volume as loud as possible. They, I mean, it was to the point that it was deafening when you put in a coin. It was.
We still do that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I mean, you're playing the game and the music is so loud that you barely hear anything that's going on. And I remember at the time at the mall. And sorry if I'm going too slow with this, but I just remember it all so well. We would go to that Alderwood Mall, and there was a food court there. And we would have that Fourth Mix so loud that you could almost hear it outside to where the mall entrance was. And it's like, you put in a coin and you just cover your ears because it was so loud. And I think Chris was sort of embarrassed sometimes. But and what's funny is, so we started talking at the time, and Chris sort of connected with people in Austin, Texas at the time. Of course, Roxor Games, and they sort of had a knack of sort of taking projects or freeware type things or sort of low budget type of titles and turning them into arcade releases. And at the time, I think that even though we were playing Fourth Mix, Extreme was out for a while, and we were close friends with a lot of the Portland community too. And what actually happened is some community members in Portland had written a letter to Konami, and there was, a rumor at the time that Extreme was going to be the last mix, because it basically, there was a lot of taglines like "We're starting over" or "Thank you for playing," sort of like the things you see at the end of a series. And so, some of the community members down in Portland, I think Tyler Harding was one of them, which his name, he's a very, very old school player. Some people probably don't even know who he is today, but he wrote a letter. And the interesting part was I know a lot of people that have tried to write letters or communicate with Konami in Japan, and they actually wrote back, and they basically said that they didn't intend to release another arcade Dance Dance Revolution after Extreme. And so when we saw that, I mean, bear in mind there were some other things that they, some general PR stuff too that was said that obviously didn't sound so negative, but in a sense, when you read it, it basically came across as, "We're not making any more arcade DDR. Sorry. Thank you for playing."
That's crazy, because that's the first time I've heard that it was ever confirmed.
Me too.
Right?
Yeah.
We all thought it, for sure.
In fact, I really wish we had a copy of that letter, like, a picture of it or something, so that which we could share. Unfortunately, I don't have that because I didn't think it was a big deal at the time. I mean, I thought it was a big deal, but I didn't think it would be a piece of history or something. So that kind of made us all sad, obviously. And so when you think about ITG, what we were was a group of players, because at the time, obviously, Chris and myself. Then there were some other people from Seattle, like Chris Foy, and then we got together with the people in Texas, and we sort of assembled a small team all around the U.S. and actually one of the guys was in Canada too. I think what was his name? MJ, actually, the guy who did a lot of the double steps.
He did some crazy patterns.
He did.
He did, absolutely.
Not as crazy as Foy, though.
Yeah, Foy was known for really pushing the limits with the charts. I mean, there's a lot of his charts that remain on some of the machines up in Seattle. I think that they recently sold it at an auction or something. But he would always make some crazy some steps to like things like Dropout, and he would name them different sort of categories for things. And at the time, GPF Lith was also a very, very big player up in Seattle for Team Seattle, sort of the leader. And so. But yeah, Foy was basically known for making a lot of the steps that would push limits. But so in a sense, what happened is we just loved, obviously playing dance games in the arcade, and we were just really sad to see them go away, or hear that they were going to go away, or basically have no hope that there would be another version after Extreme. And so, we waited a little bit and waited, and it just didn't seem like anything was coming. And so we started thinking to ourselves, you know what, we need to do something to keep this going, because we love this game, we love this concept, and we don't want to see it die. And
that's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's to be honest, that was sort of the general wave of ITG, and sort of what we were really dance game enthusiasts, and specifically a lot of us for DDR, but some of us had played excuse me, some of us had played Pump, some of us had played Techno Motion was another game at the time, which was it wasn't really well received by a lot of people, but it was another game, it was another option.
You're too nice.
Well, every game has its strengths, I guess. But, and actually, what's funny is originally when we started talking about like the ITG concept, and when I say we, basically, like the Rockstar Collective, and then all the the rest of us as players, we wanted ITG to really be an upgrade kit to Techno Motion, because we wanted to do 9-panel at the time. But
interesting.
And we thought it was easily accessible too, just based on the hardware when we took a look at it more. But we determined.
Kyle, when I think 9-panel, I think easily accessible.
No, I meant the hardware. Like the actual concept of 9-panel is not easily accessible. No.
Thanks so much for sharing. I want to make sure we have so many listener questions. I want to make sure we get to ask you a few more before we're out of time.
Yeah. Let me speed this.
Please finish this thought.
Yeah, I'll speed this up as soon as possible. Yeah. Sorry.
No, it's totally fine.
We originally, so we wanted to make it as an upgrade kit to Techno Motion cabinets because of all the theoretical, options that we could do. But we realized that there just weren't enough Techno Motion cabinets in the world to really consider to be worth our while. I think at the time there were like 34 or something in the entire area in the U.S. So it just wouldn't be making sense, to make a project and then not see it do well. So I guess, to answer your question, sort of ITG was sort of born on the fact of we were enthusiasts, we loved playing in the arcades, and we wanted to see the arcade continue. And sort of, some of the concepts that ended up getting into StepMania too, like the mines, and even things like the Toasty. The Toasty occurred because of a Mortal Kombat machine that was actually behind that fourth mix machine in the Alderwood Mall. So I remember, going home after we would do a lot of play sessions with Chris, and I would tell him about features or ideas I had, right down to the mines too. Originally that, obviously got ported into StepMania. So anyway, a lot of the features that we wanted to put into In the Groove actually would make it into StepMania as well at the same time. And it was, Chris was very active with the development. And then Glenn's another guy that, a lot of people don't know Glenn, but he is actually, his background was Pump It Up, to tell you the truth. And he became sort of the StepMania right-hand man. Most of the code that you see that is StepMania today is contributed by Glenn. And he's just a mastermind. I don't know anyone that can program like that guy. He's just amazing at what he does.
He's really good.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, that's
awesome.
Kind of the summary of how it started. Yep.
Super appreciated, dude. Thanks for sharing. I want to kick it to another panel member to kind of lead us down another path.
Sure.
Well, I was just kind of wondering, like, did the success of In the Groove, did you expect it to be anywhere as successful as it ended up being?
No, not at all. To tell you the truth, it was just a group of like 7 of us, and we originally, we started just showing it, or I feel so bad for the manager at Illusions at the time. Illusions was the arcade up in Seattle. He was just so nice because he let us just sort of take over his Disney Rave machine. The first In the Groove machine that ever existed was actually a converted Disney Rave machine.
Oh wow!
And so we would go to that arcade, and there were so many things that we would do to that machine. And we'd break it, we'd leave, and it seemed like the guy was phenomenal with the trusting us with stuff. I remember we tried to originally run ITG on Windows first, and that was a horrible idea because of registry errors and things that happened with arcades.
I think I've seen a picture of like a candy cab that was running Windows and had like a metal pad attached to it.
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of crazy stuff that would.
Yeah.
But Illusions was so great to us because they were really our first location where things happen. And then to answer your question, In the Groove 1 took so long. We'd always joke around because we'd be changing steps or changing something with the game, and when you look back at it, it doesn't look very good. It looks like crap. Like just even the way the combo looks and the way the game and art.
It was pretty Web 2.0, I thought.
Well, it's like it was definitely, it was different, and I think everyone knows, like, when you look at ITG 1 and ITG 2, the difference is just,
it's insane.
Light years ahead,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so actually, Ryan McKenna, Plague Fox, had just said on Twitter today that today is the 14th anniversary of ITG's original arcade release.
Yeah,
no kidding.
Yeah,
wow.
I saw that too.
That's perfect.
We planned that perfectly, like on purpose, completely on purpose.
Totally. Did.
Totally planned.
I knew you guys did. That's.
It's funny that you mention breaking Illusion's machines, because I feel like a lot of us probably have experience breaking ITG machines.
Oh yeah.
Hacking them.
Big time.
Well,
yes. So I mean, I'm sure you've seen kind of what the ITG community has, like, the direction that they've taken the game now. Like, so what do you think about that? With all the modding and really hard charts and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, it's, what's important to me is just people having fun. And so I think one of the things that ITG gave people was sort of standardization. And I think that, unfortunately, with all the modding and things that people do today, not just from a hardware perspective, but, people have different concepts of, like, what the actual difficulty levels are. People, have different syncs on different machines, and it makes it just so hard to get a consistent experience from machine to machine. And I think, back in if you played ITG in the original days, even if it wasn't perfect, we definitely had a consistency between all the machines that you could expect when you played it. And I think that, unfortunately, today a little, that has kind of gone away, obviously, and it's not in a negative sense either. I mean, people are doing what they are to keep the game going and progressing it, and it's really cool to see some of the stuff that people have done with the themes and just the innovation that we wish we could have done, or maybe we didn't even think of. And it's when I just look at some of the stuff that people do, especially with, like, the modded songs and stuff now that people are doing, it's just insane, and it's just really cool. But I mean, to summarize, though, what I really like seeing is just that people can still use it to have fun, and no matter what it is or what style of play they like to do, as long as they're having fun and there's benchmarks, for them and their friends, that's really what it's all about. And was kind of the vision for the game to begin with. So it's just kind of nice to see that go on and see people, stepping up to do that at tournaments and everything too.
So you were talking about standardization, and I think when I heard about the StepManiaX project, that was one of the things I was excited about, because I kind of feel, when I think about the ITG scene right now, I'm like, the thing that makes me not care about it as much is the lack of standardization. And I was really excited when I heard about StepManiaX, because it was coming from you, and I know that based on ITG 1 and ITG 2 that you care about things like that, and having like all the machines sync the same way and all the steps be the same. And, I think it really does give people, like, targets to shoot for, and it's like a nice shared experience.
Yeah, it's absolutely important. When you're comparing your scores with your friends or people around the world or something, people need to have access to exactly the same thing in order to create sort of a benchmark or any sort of competition level. And it's definitely the essence of any sort of game, because you definitely need that. Otherwise, you can't really make any comparisons the same way. You can try, but it's just not the same. And I think that's sort of, that's a secret sauce for any sort of game of any type. There has to be a standardization that people are, and the thing is everyone doesn't necessarily have to agree on it. There are things that maybe you don't like or things that you wish that were improved. But at the end of the day, what's important is that it's the same for everybody.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yep. So we had a listener question here from Telperion at Renashta on Twitter. He says, I want to hear a little bit about the period between ITG and StepManiaX, your other projects in there. So how did your vision evolve? How did your other rhythm game projects influence StepManiaX?
And he specifically alludes to the video of an early ReRave prototype with a free-form mat sensor, which may jog your memory.
Yeah. So, oh man, that is such a broad question, because I mean that's so many years. But I would
Let's keep it to 90 seconds.
I'll try my best.
No. But actually, but I'm joking. But actually,
So within the groove, I think we were sort of at a different time with the project because for us, we wanted to push the limits and keep things going. I think that that obviously did really well for what the ITG spirit was. With Pump It Up Pro after that, which is funny because a lot of people think that project wouldn't have happened, but even if we would have had In the Groove 3, Pump It Up Pro actually still would have happened anyway, because Emera had come to us at the ASI show, actually the last ASI show where In the Groove 2 was shown, and they wanted a version of Pump It Up that was more accessible to people or to the US market. And so the vision with Pump It Up Pro wasn't necessarily the same as it was with ITG. What we were trying to do there is basically make the game more inviting to people and make it easier for them to use, because a lot of people had this sort of I don't know if it's like stigma or like they just weren't interested in 5-panel after they tried 4-panel, and some of that's still true today a little bit, I think, because it depends on what game you start on, whether or not if you start on 5-panel or 4-panel you prefer one or the other. But what we really tried to do with Pump It Up Pro was we cleaned up the interface, we made it easy to use, and we made it familiar to people that were familiar with In the Groove. And I think we really did a good job with that because there were a lot of advancements that were done to the Pump It Up series at the time. I mean, things like buttons never existed before Pump It Up Pro.
Yeah, crazy to me as a non-pump player.
Yeah. And things like welded back bars, that didn't even that wasn't a thing with Pump either until Pump It Up Pro.
They were screwed in. Yeah, and the screws always came loose.
How is that even?
Yeah, and there, there's some reasons behind why they did things that way, and I understand that. But the bottom line is it just wasn't as good, right? It just over time it would break, and it just wasn't a good design, and people thought it was cheap, and really they started doing that just for shipping reasons. But even so, my point being is that the Pro series really sort of, I feel, introduced a lot of things to the Pump It Up series at the time that sort of, advanced it a little bit. And at the time, there was a lot of hesitation, obviously, with pump players. And if I look back at any sort of trend with all the projects that we've done, every single project has upset some group of players, and I'm not really sure why sometimes, but like
people don't like change.
They don't. Absolutely,
it's a very passionate group of people too.
Absolutely, and being music game players, we all know each other, and we have for over the years. But everyone is super passionate, and that's what it is. It's just passion among people, but. From everything that we've done, it's, within the groove, we made a lot of, obviously, DDR players unhappy. With Pro, we made a lot of pump players unhappy. With ReRave, we kind of pissed off multiple people, like Technica and that liked Osu and Elite Beat Agents. So, no one knew who to be pissed off at. I guess one thing it's taught you, though, is with every project, you just have to have sometimes, thick skin, because you'll hear all kinds of things and see things. I mean, I've seen things in forums and stuff like, I hate Kyle Ward. His music is crap. Everything he does sucks. And it's, that's fine. And I mean, I can certainly take that feedback from people. And it really, it's just, they're just passionate about what they like. And, that there's nothing wrong with that. But, going back to the question, every single project we've done, I think, has accomplished a new goal. And the thing I'm probably most proud about is no matter what, we've created some press, and we've done some things, and we've pushed the limits a little bit further and innovated things with every little project. Every single fork of StepMania, right down to when we did Pro after ITG, we advanced the StepMania engine too. And there were things added to the StepMania engine that progressed it. And, right down to StepManiaX today. StepMania never had touch support, and you're starting to see people be interested in touch support now, and other things that we're introducing, back to the engine again. And so I'm sort of proud of that, and I think that it's just a good feeling to see that stuff progresses over time, and sort of remember all the times that and all the long development hours doing all that stuff too. So
that was such a nice timeline. I loved the transition from ReRave to StepManiaX.
Yeah.
And the ASI, I think that was ASI 2006.
Yes.
And I was there, and I actually met you there. Except
that's right. Yeah.
And
you were playing Supernova, right?
Yeah, and Konami was there, and so it was kind of like a portentous event, I think, in the scene.
Yep.
So Kyle, do you see StepManiaX as kind of what all your other projects sort of between ITG and now were working towards, or is it just kind of another stepping stone, or just another thing? Like,
nice pun, Dalton.
Or I mean, do you see StepManiaX as kind of something bigger than all your other sort of in between projects?
No, I do. So the way I describe it to people is StepManiaX is sort of like a mature version of basically everything that came before it. And I know I used I think I used a Power Rangers reference at one point, which, geez, I said it was like the Megazord of everything. But I think, when we look at ITG, there's a lot of things that we got wrong. I mean, a lot of people like to think it was it was a huge success, absolutely. But, when you look back at it for new players and intermediate players, it was a complete disaster. When people accidentally enter the mod menu, I mean, there's no hope for those poor beginner players because they look at all those options.
Text.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. It's a wall of text and it's completely awful. And at the time, we thought it was a great idea, but when you look at it and you see new players try to use it, it was a horrible idea. And we really missed the ball with the new and the intermediate players with that project. With Pro, I think that we did it sort of a better job of introducing new people to things, but at the same time, a lot of people criticized some of the steps that we did because they didn't have as many turns as standard pump steps do, like M runs and things like that, which we did have that stuff, but we intentionally made some of the songs or authored some of the songs, like Shusha is a good example of that. It didn't really have any sort of complex pump turns or elements to it. And that was because we knew that 4-panel players that were going to be playing Pro weren't going to be experienced with those motions or those moves. So they would be discouraged. So what we wanted to do is bring a familiar song in there with something that they could play and still have fun with. And so, I think we did a really good job with the intermediate and the easy aspect for players with that game. And I think, ReRave is a whole different beast because with that game, we were so happy with creating a concept where it didn't involve any overlapping of any kind, which anyone that knows music games and sort of the legality behind music games, it's very hard to make a music game project when you're restricted by so many legal patents, unfortunately. And ReRave forced us to think outside of the box and do something a little bit different. And I know that there's a lot of players that enjoyed that game still today. For a lot of people that would try it, it was really hard because, it was like, it's almost like speaking another language when you're used to overlapping objects and now you're suddenly faced to learn a new reading format that is completely different. But StepManiaX, I think it's sort of the pinnacle of everything because we learned a lot from the UI with ReRave. We learned a lot about, the making things easy and approachable with Pro. We learned about some of the expert stuff that is definitely needed with ITG and pushing the limits. Although, we didn't introduce it at first with StepManiaX.
I'm trying to help out with that.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think
blood rush.
Exactly. But I think we've done a really, when you look at the project in whole, it's got like a sort of a piece of all of those projects right down to some of the songs and the song list that appeared in all of those. And so it's really just kind of great to see that. And I honestly, I've done all these projects over the years, but, I'm confident in saying that, I think StepManiaX may be the last project that I do because I see it going on for a very, very long time with as much interest as there is in it. And I think it's awesome. Really hitting so many good points. So
awesome.
We hope so too.
Yeah, it seems like with StepManiaX, I feel like because you are clearly so dedicated to this and you have the means of doing this independently, basically, I think that it's if you think about it, Konami and Andamiro and everyone else who's making music games, they might eventually change their tune and decide not to do it. But you could just keep doing it forever. So it's possible that StepManiaX could actually be the last dance game standing.
Yeah, that's totally true. And sorry, go ahead, James.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, one of the biggest complaints that we have about Konami and DDR is just that it's kind of like a faceless corporation.
Yeah,
that,
walled garden.
Walled garden. They have no really interaction with the the community itself, like through various limited means sometimes, but
they could learn a lot from a lot of different gaming companies.
Yeah, I just think that that's one of the things that really attracts me to your project is that it seems to be a like a very fan-run project.
It's more personal.
More personal, yeah. It's a small, you're running a small company, and
but doing big things.
Yeah, but doing big things, and you're willing to talk to us, a couple of losers on a podcast. So we just think that that's like a huge step forward for the whole industry.
No, I mean, I appreciate that. I mean, I think, when you become a big corporation, which it eventually happens to a lot of companies over time, but a lot of times what happens is the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing, and things become, purely financial decisions at that point, which, any sort of corporate atmosphere, it is always about, the financials and basically money at that point. And so, we can't blame some of these other companies for doing some of the things that they do as players, and it's hard for me sometimes too, because the one thing that, the position that I'm in today is I have to be sort of that, the corporate, business mindset, but at the same time, I'm also a player and I understand the details that matter and the things that people, what's important for people and different aspects of stuff. But, sometimes, it's just difficult because it's like a scale that you can't ever win with one or the other. You have to sort of make calls in different directions. And I'm thankful that, yes, that we're able to do that. And a lot of times I've been telling people that, we're trying to maintain sort of a traditional dance game with what we've done with StepManiaX, and it really feels good to sort of return to it, after everything we did with ReRave for a while. I think it's just good to have options too. And no matter what happens with the other companies or the other products, I'm sure that they'll find a way to continue, or something will happen that at least the true followers will be able to latch onto. But regardless, we are another option for people. And I think that's what the market needs. And that's why I fight so hard for this stuff all the time. And that's why I'm kind of insane. It's because I think options are good.
Yeah, and like we were talking about ASI, like the more stuff happens, right?
Yes.
Like you've got this going on, and other people will respond by saying things like, "Oh, I could do something like this too," and then they'll do it, and then
yes,
who knows
Rhythm Horizon,
what Konami and Emera will do when they look at these projects.
Yeah, so. Absolutely.
There are actually, you alluded to like this idea of, almost like you kind of alluded to like a pendulum. You didn't use that word exactly, but I think that's ties in two listener questions really well. So I want to read both, and I think they both touch on the same thing. So I want to hear your perspective on this. So
sure.
The first is from Watson, aka @YoungJunatham on Twitter. And he writes, many DDR players got into dance games by growing up with home console releases. But these home accessible solutions no longer exist today. Do you see StepManiaX as a means to help revive extra gaming, encourage more accessibility for a mass audience? Your long-term goals and visions to help do this. So that's one, right? Then JJK, @JJK all day. Where do you see dance game esports going from here? It's clear that there's a growing demand from players to see more legitimized esports scene, which is awesome. How will StepManiaX further that? So I think this is really interesting. There's a really interesting dichotomy here where it's like, one listener is asking about the home accessibility and another is asking about the tournament structure, esports.
They're connected though, right?
They're totally connected. We need to have a large funnel so people are interested and end up, a small percentage end up getting really, really good. And hopefully everybody stays competitive, right? That's our hope in this room, but not sure what yours is, Kyle. But yeah, we'd love to hear your take on kind of like where you see StepManiaX a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now. How is it more accessible? How is it promoting dance game esports? What are your thoughts on these two spheres of influence, I guess, for the product that is StepManiaX?
Right, yeah. So, consumer access to a product is super, super important. And we really learned that with ITG to some extent, because we sort of did things backwards, unfortunately, because we, in some ways, though, it's actually good. Otherwise, we would have probably not gotten as far as we did. But I think for people to be able to play at home or have access to stuff like, console games, I think it's super important because that's how you reach sort of, people wanting to have fun with it and not necessarily the competitive side of things. But people, if you don't have something that's reasonable price for people, they can't experience it. And even, the biggest problem we have today is just sort of the state of the amusement scene. Everyone
Yeah.
is not going to experience a dance game in an arcade as much as they would have maybe 10 years ago. And it's just because, arcades in America, for instance, are basically Dave and Buster's in round one. They're basically ran
Right.
by that large corporation.
Although round one's making pretty big expansions, so
Absolutely. And that I didn't mean that as a
Yeah.
negative thing at all. I'm just saying that, it's back in the day we had mall arcades, we had like more family fun centers, we had other type of venues, which there's still some of those that exist today. But so how does that tie into the consumer level? It's super important that people can approach this stuff and be able to play it at home. And one of the things that I constantly try to do with just our pad hardware, or the stages, is that I know that the prices that we're offering are not necessarily affordable for everyone out there, and there are things that that we, and ideas that we have to try to improve that. Some people have asked for like leasing or sort of payment plans. Some people have asked for trying to get a product down in cost, and we're really trying to explore all those options. But for us, the demand is also just so insane at the same time that it's like every time we turn around to try to do something, I have to basically, I don't think a lot of people realize, but all the stages that get shipped out to people, I'm in a shop actually, boxing those up, testing things, emailing people, any sort of support questions that they have. I'm sort of doing all that. And some people will say, well, why do you do all that? The reason why is because of the cost. If we didn't do it this way, we wouldn't be able to keep the cost at where it is, even though it seems expensive right now. It's not realistic, for us to be able to, charge maybe $2,000 for a stage for people to buy at home. I wouldn't say it's necessarily a good approachable consumer product because of the price. So to basically combat that, what we are doing is looking at, some designs and some ways to utilize what we've done in sort of a lower cost solution. And we're sort of having to be forced to do that too, based on like what's going on with the economy right now with steel and aluminum and importing stuff. And I guess in summary, for the consumer question, we are trying to do what we can to make the game more accessible for people that aren't as fortunate with being able to spend that much. And that is important to me. And I continually try to find ways to do that. And I'm confident going forward, we'll figure out ways to make, less expensive version of the pad. And it takes time at the same time as we're trying to get everything else out that we've already done. But I believe it will grow, and I believe we'll find ways to be able to do it for less cost. There's no doubt about it. And then on the other side of the spectrum, for the competitive esport people, I know that I know immediately when I play these games too, that there is a huge draw for competition and esports, and just friendly ranking amongst people around the world with these games. Part of what needs to be done with that is trying to get the game not just in the sense of a game. It needs to become more of like a sport that's taken seriously. And we took steps towards doing that in 2006 with ITG, actually, because there was a brief moment where it was an acceptable sport in Norway. Unfortunately, it didn't really get followed up at the time because of what happened with the fate of the ITG series. But what really needs to be done is approaching some of the fitness companies and the people that take sporting events serious. And in order to do that, there are things that have to be done with the games as well, because companies like that don't want to just view a product as a video game. At that point, it's more of it needs to be more serious for a sport. Things like heart rate start to matter. Things like the appearance of a product, or not relying on people just spending coins on the game. There's things that need to be done in order to push that further. And so, one of the things I think we're doing with StepManiaX is we're really trying to approach that fitness and even the school market to try to get people to take it more seriously. It isn't just a video game that people are spending, dollars on here and there, or just, buying
really
at their house. What it is a fitness tool and a way that people, just like any other sport, people are benchmarking themselves against others around the world. And so, I've done what I can, even with meetings with some of which, I can't mention some of those companies yet, because, some of them have been good meetings, some of them have been challenging meetings. But, either way, it's all progression forward as far as I'm concerned.
It's awesome, man.
So just throwing this out there, have you thought about opening an amusement chain?
An amuse. Oh, like StepManiaX arcades.
Yeah, yeah. That's what I want to see.
It's an interesting idea, but I think I think it's difficult because if you just have one product, I think it's kind of difficult to rent out a whole space and then have one product sitting in that.
I mean, you could just have 8 products.
Oh, you got StepManiaX, you got ReRave, you got Pump
just
Pro.
Kyle Ward Arcade.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I do want to mention.
Want to play that or be there for that. Go ahead. Sorry.
I did want to mention though, because when Omid was talking about esports, and he brought up JJK's question. You started talking about how you wanted it to be considered a real sport and how things happen in Norway and such. The world right now is quite different in the sense that, like, actual video games are pretty big now.
Yeah, they are.
And you have League of Legends, you got the fighting game scene.
Dota 2 has like $25 million.
Yeah, exactly.
There's
So
even a
I
pinball
think
scene.
that it might be worth considering that even if people do look at it as a video game, there's nothing wrong with that.
No, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I think the biggest problem, and here's the biggest challenge really for that type of audience, is the games that like League of Legends. It's really the numbers and the draw of people. And when we think about music games, they are a niche type of situation.
That's true,
definitely.
And what we need to do, which sort of indirectly relates to the consumer level or the approachable aspect, is making it easy to use and easy to understand. And so a lot of the meetings that I've had with some of these companies, those are positive points that they actually do like about the StepManiaX product is and going right back to sort of the inspiration that I have, because I still draw a lot of the inspiration from those original third mix, fourth mix days that I was talking about in the beginning of the interview. If you look back at those games in comparison to what we have today, and even if we consider Pump It Up in this as well as DDR A, I don't honestly feel it's as approachable and easy to use for these new types of people in comparison to what the older mixes were. If you look at
it's absolutely not.
No,
people go up and try and they don't understand the EMUs thing and
exactly
the menus are very.
You used to be able to just put a coin in and press the button and it would start, right?
Exactly. I remember playing a game of DDR 2013 at one point at some location, and I was able to start the game somehow into doubles mode without actually paying. And then what happened is it dumped me back into the attract, where I couldn't even play. So it's.
Have you played Ace, Kyle?
Yeah.
You know what? I have not actually played it, but I have been around it to see people playing it. I haven't actually experienced it myself, but I really like the direction they've taken with it in comparison to like 2013 and 2014.
Oh yeah,
it's so much better. Oh, so much better.
Time.
But going back to what we were saying, I think that all the dance games still, and every music game to a sense, has a problem with new people trying to approach them and use them, and I think that contributes to the low numbers that use them, unfortunately.
I think we all agree with that.
Yeah. I've basically I don't know, I won't take too much time on this, but basically I've put it down, my theory is there's people in two camps. There's the new people who find the motion super impressive, for example, anybody who's never seen DDR, they see Chris Chike play, they're like, oh my God, look at his feet, look at his body, he's barely moving, but he's doing everything. It's insane, right?
Yeah.
And then the people like us, the 5 of us who are talking together right now, we only really care about how many marvelouses are you getting, how many perfects are you getting, we want to see perfection, right? We want to see that MFC, we want to see that 100%, that quad star, whatever.
Yes.
We want to see that technical skill, right? So it's really hard to find that gray area that's including everybody. And it's exciting.
Yeah, I think Kyle was also talking about the UI.
Definitely,
is a huge thing.
Absolutely, the UI, and it's sort of like what you're saying too. When a common person walks up and sees the game, when they see a combo going up, they're focusing on the combo. They don't even know really what perfect or marvelous or fantastic means.
Yep.
So
exactly. Oh my God, he has a 600 combo.
Exactly.
Or it's even worse when they go, oh, he has 120 combo. And it's
exactly.
That's nothing.
It doesn't matter at all.
But to answer your question, Roger, what you were saying is to get the game more at the level of these other games is it has to be approachable, and we have to get the numbers up to the point that more people care about it, and that's really what we're working to try to do. And I think that StepManiaX has a good approach with it because what we've tried to do is try to make a universal experience, whether or not it's in the arcade, whether or not it's at a church or a school or a fitness center.
I was first exposed to DDR through, my brother was at a church event of just a home pad set hooked up to a PS2. So it's like to be able to have, that level of accessibility is really important for discoverability of new people being able to find it.
100% agree.
Absolutely. And we've had a lot of success with YMCAs. I mean, here at the end of September,
which is great.
We'll have another YMCA in Illinois, actually, that just purchased StepManiaX all-in-one machine. And so, we're getting those to different locations. And this is a good example of, like, when people tell me, like, what do we do if there's not any arcades anymore? I bet that anyone can name, community centers around them, like within 5 miles of where you actually are at this moment, whether or not that's a YMCA or a fitness center or, some kind of local center where people go. That hasn't left. And, even though arcades are not what they used to be, people still go out. People still like to have fun, and people like to meet other people. And, dance games are a part of that. And I think that's still where they belong. And it's, even if we play them at home, they really shine in a public place where people can meet each other and just, sort of make friends and have fun. So
Kyle.
Yes.
I want to talk to you. I want to ask you at least one. I want to ask at least one in the weeds StepManiaX question, because I think it'd be interesting to get your perspective, as you are kind of the, you're at the top of the food chain here in StepManiaX land. So, I know what my answer is to this question, but I'm curious about how you think about charting in StepManiaX. It is 5-panel. There is a center panel with the 4 arrows, which makes it much more difficult and much different than just 4-panel play. So what do you think are the hardest parts about designing a chart for StepManiaX play? And what do you think are like the hardest things to like the hardest bad habits to break, or
absolutely
the good habits to keep in mind when creating step charts in StepManiaX?
So and before I go off on your topic a little bit, what we wanted to do was we wanted to make something that was familiar to, because we had the choice of doing something completely different. Obviously, we could do a different panel formation or anything. The sky's the limit. But the reason we stuck with this is because we wanted something that was familiar to people. That people like the cardinal format. There's no denying that. We don't necessarily want more panels. We just want more variety. We want more options and more things to enjoy. But at the same time, I believe that the traditional 4-panel format suffers a little bit in the sense that a lot of people have gotten to the point that they're literally so good at the game that they're barely moving anymore. And that's not a fault of the person, but going back to the esports topic too, sometimes it's not fun for people to watch as a spectator because it's not necessarily interesting. So what we need to do is sort of increase that movement again and get people moving to the point where and I don't want to say like the old days, but if you think
the old days,
if you think about people playing on their toes a little bit and sort of being more aware of the actual panels and not just edging it's funny because when you look at the transition, it went from people using their toes and then using the brackets, and now just sort of staying in the center and just using the sides of their feet. And there's nothing.
Hey, I still wear shoes.
I do too.
I still move my feet.
I'm not knocking it either because everyone should play whatever they like to play and whatever they have fun with. But in the sense of what we've tried to do with this format is we wanted to open things up again and make the cardinal format sort of competitive again and make people sort of think outside of the box and have to do different things. I would think some of the biggest challenges, I would think, but some of the challenges are when you convert to trying the StepManiaX format is that center panel. You have to be aware of what it is, the patterns that are happening at the time, because one of the things I really like are sort of the twists that we get, with doing things like the left center up type motion, which is really reminiscent of a pump move, really, if you play a 5-panel. And I think it really invites itself to some interesting patterns. But at the same time, as a step chart author, you have to be aware of things, like going center up center, and you're literally stepping over your own feet sometimes, and you really have to train yourself to pick up your feet, because if you leave your feet down, you can sometimes still pass things and get through it, but you're really hurting your score. And a lot of people, when they first try the game, they look down at the pad like, okay, this pad isn't working. What's going on? And it isn't
Yeah.
the pad's fault. What it is people just they've gotten so used to not moving their feet, from the center position. And so when we originally started with the concept, I was, as simple as adding a panel in the center. It really helps that because it makes people have to move again and sort of be aware of their footwork. And I think it just really increases the technicality of the charts a little bit, and especially makes
Definitely.
things like bracketing really fun too. Like, because it's really fun to hit sometimes 2 panels with 1 foot, which is something that, we sort of explored with ITG, and we even did, hands to a point. But I'd say StepManiaX really opens itself up to, hitting multiple panels with 1 foot, which it's still, when people see that, it's kind of daunting at first because like, how am I supposed to do this, right? It's like there's more than 2 things here and I only have 2 feet. But, other things that we've introduced to the game that I think are really fun that are just, just starting out are things like the lifts. I always wanted to see lifts be a thing in Pump Pro, and we got it like maybe 40% into the engine of Pump Pro and never finished it. And StepManiaX is really the true project where that concept comes to light, because it has like its own windows and things that you have to do to make it fun. Sort of like with the mines. I mean, the mines also have like a grace period, because if you didn't have that, they would be a lot harder than they are. But I think we've done a lot of things with the format and sort of the features with the game that sort of push, just the innovation in the charts a little bit further. I mean, even the rolls. I mean, I'm a huge fan of the rolls and basically, getting people, it's like a more precise vision of what you should do with the rolls. Like, how hard do you want it to be? Do you want to make someone hit, 8 times in a matter of, a quarter note, or do you want to let them, have easy, just easy hits over the course of a bar or something?
And to be clear, if you haven't played the game yet, StepManiaX rolls, they basically give you a number and how many times you need to hit the roll in that before it ends. Instead of an ITG where it's just
Constant
you have to
movement.
hit it constantly. What, 8 notes, 16th notes, 8 notes,
Roughly, yeah.
8 notes, yeah. So StepManiaX does that differently.
And then lifts also are similar to like the 2DX
Yes.
hell charge
Hold
notes.
yes.
Where
You have to
lift them up.
Exactly.
You have to lift your hand up or lift your foot up at the end of the hold.
On beat.
Yeah,
Which I love that.
Absolutely. And some of these things, they aren't, like brand new ideas. What they are is sort of, they're borrowed ideas or refactored ideas, basically from other things that should be in a dance game. And that was kind of what our vision was with it, and why we introduced it. And I really think some of those new things make the gameplay interesting. And we're just at the starting point, with everything that we're doing with the game. And unlike some of the games that we've done in the past, we've started things a little bit slow, and the reason why is we want to progress things over time. So like we don't push the limits so fast that we get to our second or our third edition of the game and everyone's already done everything that can be done. We're trying to progress things over time so that it's still fun for people, and we're introducing them to the concept. But I'm really happy with what we've done so far, even with like the mine, we call them pits, but they're like mine holds, where we even have them in some charts deliberately on the center panel. So what that means is that you cannot have your heel or parts of your foot on that center panel. And, you won't
Bagpipe comes to mind.
Exactly.
Bagpipe is like
Yeah, and when you're going for
play
score,
that song if you can.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. When you're going for score, you might be tempted to still, hug the panels with your feet, and you can still do it, but you just won't get as good as a scorer, and you'll get some earlies here and there, and you'll wonder why, and it's just because you're not moving your feet, and it's definitely not a problem with the hardware. It's just we've trained ourselves now in 2018 to play the game that way. So yeah.
So we won't keep you too much longer here.
Sure.
But we got a lot of questions about just kind of the future of StepManiaX. A lot of questions about hardware. So, like, is there anything you can kind of tease about? I know you posted a picture of like the 5-panel or
yes,
rather the pump style. Either that, and people were asking about the adjustable bars.
Yes.
And arcade cabinets. Like any teases you can give us for the future of StepManiaX hardware.
Awesome. So we are always innovating behind the scenes, and the difficult part is we're trying to ship stuff at the same time and support people that have it. But there isn't a day where we're not thinking of something new to go into the stage, right down to the sensors too. I mean, we're doing a lot of experiments. A lot of our stages obviously are only using what's called a load cell right now, which is a pressure-based sensor. But we're doing a lot of experiments with things like FSR sensors too, which eventually we hope to integrate into the system in the future, and possibly have future versions of the stages that utilize them as well. And FSRs are sort of a little bit different technology than a load cell, but they still are applicable to sort of the application that we have with the stage, obviously.
What exactly is that?
So an FSR is basically a force-resistive sensor. It has, without being too technical, when we compare it to a load cell, it has advantages and it has disadvantages. The biggest disadvantage is that it doesn't have the level of detail for pressure that a load cell does. But I would argue in our application of like a dancing game, how much detail do we really need on someone's pressure? At this point, we aren't really utilizing pressure too much in the game, and the reason for that is we started off with experiments with doing that, but one of the reasons we shied away from it was if someone was a lighter person, like they weighed less, like 150 pounds versus someone that it's like 200 or 250. They're at an immediate disadvantage in some of the modes in the game, like if we encourage, certain types of pressure. And even though it's a very cool concept and things that, can be done with it in a competitive standpoint, it's not really fair when we only have 2 feet. If we utilize things like the bar and stuff and enforce things like that, it can work, but it's just not an ideal case. And so we elected against sort of the pressure type of modes in the game for that reason. We wanted it to be fair for everyone, whether or not they're 8 years old or they're 60 years old playing the game. We want it to be a good experience for everybody. But the FSRs, they're basically a small. They're almost like a sticker, sort of, in terms of the size of what they are. And you're able to fit more of them in. You can do more. You can put more amount of detail in like maybe position sensing. There's all kinds of things we can do with them. But one of the things that I'm really happy about is, if you have a StepManiaX stage, we really do a good job of trying to make it so that all of our parts are modular, so that you can add things on after time, whether or not you're using like one of the new dedicated cabinets, or you're using the all-in-one like you have, Omid, or some people, right now only 2 people have the integrated touch monitor, which is sort of how we're trying to approach the home market a little bit right now, sort of undercover. But all of the parts sort of work with each other. The rectangular panels will probably be a little bit of a different case, because there's 2 ways to go about implementing them, and one is what I would consider the best way, and then the other one is the way it works, but it's not ideal. And I think that we rather elect for the best way. So the rectangular panels may be the one exception to that. But so the 4th generation stages, we're looking at supporting different panel forms or sizes, basically, so that people can play other games. And we're never really specific about what games people want to play, but the idea behind the stage is we wanted to create hardware that was basically an industrial experience that people are familiar with in the arcades, and sort of bringing that at home and making it so that they can utilize that with anything, whether or not it's our game or it's what they want to enjoy. And I knew immediately when we set out to do this that not everyone in the world would want to play StepManiaX or even consider it. At this point, StepMania and ITG are still going strong, and a lot of people are still playing that, and there's nothing wrong with that. They should continue to play what they want to play and enjoy, and I'm just happy to be able to provide them with hardware to be able to do that. And because I think it's been it's kind of been a dream for a lot of people in the past. People want a nice steel industrial stage because it has a feel to it that you don't get from other dance pads, whether or not they're plastic or made of wood or aluminum. There's all kinds of designs out there that have come over the years. But the basis of it is the steel, the feel of steel is very specific. And that's why
it's the real thing.
It is. Yeah. And a lot of it is just, it's the material, and it has nothing to do with the electronics or the technology in the stage itself. It's just the foundation of it. And it all starts with a good foundation. And that's why we elected to use traditional steel.
I feel like you're speaking directly to me there.
Yeah,
It's like
to all of
I
us, I
grew up
think.
wanting a machine, and hey, I bought a StepManiaX cab, and it's the best. Sorry, James. Go
Oh,
ahead.
so speaking of hardware, the one question that I was really curious about was at Champions of the Coast this year, which was just a few weeks ago.
Yes,
We saw a location test for an arcade version of
you
StepManiaX,
did.
and so I was curious if like the original plan for StepManiacs included penetrating arcades, because I actually thought it was originally envisioned only for like home and fitness center use.
So
So
to tell you the truth, it was. But we had a lot of demand from people that wanted a dedicated machine. They wanted a machine that was isolated from the stages. They didn't want it connected to the stages. They also wanted to utilize it with a credit system. And going back to when we originally started the project, which we've been developing this all the way back since like 2015, even the hardware, but the title itself. And there's been a lot of meetings with different companies and a lot of strategy and planning going forward, with even things that are in the game itself that changed over time. And I can say originally when we set out to do it, I still don't feel that the arcade market is at least in America, is really that strong. And so we wanted to be a product that could approach those other areas like no other product before. And I think that we really accomplished that. But at the same time, we have these diehard fans that have followed us in the past with these other projects. We want to see this in the arcade. I want to be able to play this. When are you going to release something that lets us do that? So we've had a lot of pressure from people, and we've tried to react to that and do what we can. And so, I mean, that's kind of why the dedicated cabinet was born. We have a lot of plans for it going forward. And anytime you don't see, or I guess if I back up, part of the reason you don't see more of those out is just because of going back to the manpower. We are a small operation, and so I can only push those to certain companies or certain partners that I know that can do a good job impacting the market for us. And so we start with location tests, and then we go from there. If it's successful and people like it, then we produce more machines, and it's just a ongoing process. And as we sell stages, we already have more in production, and it's like an endless cycle that I can't get out of, actually.
Seems like not like the worst problem to have, but
No, it's not.
I'm very happy for you personally. Like, I think
Thank
it's
you. No,
you deserve this, and
Yeah.
thanks for working as hard as you do. Like, I think the common sentiment on Twitter, when we posted soliciting questions for you, like, people just really appreciate your dedication to the craft. So on behalf of the dance game community, thanks just for putting in
thanks a
like
lot.
the hours, because it means a lot.
No, and I appreciate it too.
It feels like you're on our side,
No, absolutely. And to tell you the truth, there's we do have our share of haters out there all the time with every project, but it's really those people that I get tons of emails, tons of messages from people that are, it's so nice to see. Like we just had a mother who went out of her way to basically buy her son a stage and did everything she could, and it actually, I mean, it just sort of brought warmth to me to see that, and just it's all the positive players out there that really keep me going with this. And I have to hand it right back to the people like yourself, because it's I wouldn't feel the need to drive things forward or do some of the insane things or the insane hours or the insane investments if it wasn't for the people like you that enjoy it. And I see it every day, and really that's my driving force, almost more than the financial aspect. But luckily things work out, and we're keeping afloat, and we're a small operation growing constantly, and I have to thank the players for that. So thank you. Also,
Yeah.
Cheers, dude.
Well, so last thing here, every week or every episode, I guess, we do a set of the week where we give suggestions for people to play songs. We usually do DDR, but we thought since you're here, we'd ask you for if you have a song suggestion for somebody to play on StepManiaX.
It's such a hard question because, like, I mean, are we talking about the steps? Are we talking about the song?
You get to decide.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm a huge fan of what Justin did with the Temple of Boom steps. Actually,
I agree. Actually,
I like that
it's
too.
really fun.
I do. Yeah, and I actually really like the new version of Who that's in the game too. So just real quick, going forward with the game, we're doing sort of a combination of things. We're integrating some of the past favorites that people really liked from the other projects, but at the same time, it's fun for me because I can go back and sort of remix things or revisit it and do new versions of songs that even a new generation of players has never heard before, that some of the older players obviously will recognize. So along with the steps, we're doing the same type of combination of things we've done with all of the projects over the years. We're doing things that don't utilize the center panel too much. We're doing things that utilize it a lot with technical skill. We're doing things that that require more technical skill and some that do not. Some step charts. What I'm really proud about is we've spent a lot of time with the easy and the hard steps, making them just fun. And sort of the vision of what we've done so far is just always fun. In the end of the day, step charts are obviously a subjective thing for a lot of people, and we could talk probably for hours about just step charts. Because everyone finds certain things fun and others do not.
We do spend hours talking about step charts.
Sorry. Off the
and
record,
sometimes we get kind of aggressive in DMs, and we say mean things to other people.
No, absolutely. But it all comes back to the same thing. We're all passionate people. We all have things that we like and we want to see more of. And I think our job is just to make sure that there's a blend of all of it, and that we keep the balance going. And I'm just really proud because I think we finally hit home with a product and a dance game product. And part of the reason we named it, StepManiaX versus anything with dance is right, going back to that health and fitness industry. Is a lot of people try to associate dance games with traditional dancing, and we know that it's not. It's more of a foot or reaction based
very smart
game. And
thank you.
We've actually gotten in heated arguments with some people that teach dance classes sometimes at trade shows, being upset that we call this a dance game because it doesn't have real dancing. And I'm sorry, but it's a thing. It really is. And just simple branding and titles like that really matter for some companies, and suddenly they understand it. But I think this product is doing a good job too, getting young kids playing it, because here at the health center and where I am locally, where we first tested the all-in-one machine, we actually have kids that are 6 and 8 years old that are playing the basic mode, which the basic mode eliminates all the rest of the panels and only uses left, center, right, and it's finally easy. Same thing in Germany. There's a family center in Germany called Hugo Drum that they have a machine set up there, and the kids just play the heck out of basic, and they some of them will reach easy, but it's really exciting to see these younger kids being able to use a dancing game and with no direction. And I really think that's essential. Awesome. Absolutely. It's awesome.
That's great.
I got a couple things to say. First of all, I think we didn't really ask you to say anything about what StepManiaX is. And I think that maybe people who are listening to the podcast who are listening for DDR stuff, we're assuming that they know what it is.
Yeah.
But maybe that's not a great assumption. So if you could briefly describe it, maybe we could patch it into the front of the episode. Because we kind of went in with the assumption that everyone knows what it is.
Sure.
Yeah.
So the vision with StepManiaX was to try to maintain what we all know as traditional panel dancing games, and what we want to do is basically increase aerobic workout for people, but make it fun and competitive and sporty, while making it simple to use and easy for people of different types of age groups. And I think that we accomplished that really well with the UI and the touch aspects of it, and really just sort of the approachable aspects of the machine, because we treat the product more like a fitness tool and a more of a something like you're using like an appliance, like a plug and play appliance, not a traditional arcade machine where you're constantly trying to feed it money. So to us, it's a tool. It's not just a video game that we're paying for.
And the important thing is here that you're making industrial strength dance game stages that people can literally just buy.
Yes, and
right.
Yep, and they can
and
utilize anything they want.
Himself.
I do.
Nice.
Like a madman.
Yeah, I do. Sometimes 30 a day, which it's really hard to do that, but
wow.
Yeah.
Are you always surprised when they sell out? Like the last batch sold out a minute, right?
I was at 90 seconds actually. I was just so shocked. I had my phone sitting next to me. We had just put the link up, and I looked down at my phone and I was looking at what was going on, and it's so exciting, but at the same time, it's like, oh my God, it's more work. It's like now I'm not going to have a life all summer. So
Man.
Some may think that you broke your foot on purpose so you can get a break for
Yeah,
yourself.
this is reprieve for you.
no, so I just got a scooter today so that I can roll around out there, and
Oh my God.
and I'm not stopping. I'm responding to emails tonight right before we started doing this interview a little bit, and yeah, I can't slow down. If I slow down, nothing gets done, and people don't get their stuff. And so, as much as I'd like to be able to just sit back and do nothing, I don't have that luxury.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Well, like I said before, Kyle, we all, and I mean we all, like everybody who enjoys dance games, really appreciate what you do. This has been an honor and a privilege, and I think we're all just really lucky to call you our friend, and hope to talk to you soon about whatever else is coming up in StepManiaX. Maybe we'll have you on again, and you can have give us a brief update on kind of what's going on.
Absolutely.
But thanks again for
I'm
your
a
time.
huge fan of you guys too. I really love your show, and thanks for what
Oh,
you do to the
thanks.
community.
Thanks,
and I actually do listen to it, and I was just more than shocked that you wanted me to come on, and I appreciate the
Come
Oh,
on.
thanks. That's really nice.
thank you so much.
So if you want to learn more about StepManiaX, it's at SMX Game on Twitter.
Or
There's
StepManiaX.com too.
And yeah, also StepManiaX.com, thank you. And there's also a StepManiaX player group on Facebook. There's a StepManiaX player group on Discord as well. And you can go there with the link invite.gg/StepManiacs.
And that's Stepmania with an X at the end.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
you can call it StepMania X, you can call it StepManiaX, as long as it, whatever you want to do, it's okay.
StepMania 10.
StepMania 10.
You can call it StepMania 10. We don't care. Just, as long as Step is in the name, and that's cool with us. So whatever.
And Kyle, if people want to reach you, what is your preferred way? Like, I know you recently joined the player Discord. Is that going to be like a way for you to keep in contact? What's your preferred way?
I did, and thank you actually, because you're the one that really started us on that, Omid, so people can reach out to me on Facebook or email. I really I unfortunately just sometimes lose track of my messages, and I just can't spend as much time on Facebook because I can't get stuff done if I do. But please message me, please email me at Kyle@steprevolution.com. It's very easy.
Awesome.
Anything that you want to say, whether or not it's negative or positive, or if you want to just say hello, I will try to get back to everyone as soon as possible. And every single message I get, I love hearing from all kinds of people all over the world. So thank you for that. And please don't get discouraged if I don't respond quickly, but I do read everything. I absolutely promise that. And I do listen to everyone. So thank you.
And Kyle's also at Kyle A. Ward on Twitter,
I
right?
am, yes. I try.
Nice.
I've been trying to
So
use Twitter
go
more.
follow him.
Yes, please do.
Go follow him. Inspire him to use Twitter more.
Yeah.
It's the good one.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Hey,
it's
I've
probably
enjoyed
right.
Snapchat lately, actually, and
Nice.
All right, well,
right.
thank you so much for being on the show. And yeah, as Omid said, we'll have you on again, hopefully in the future.
sounds good. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Peace
Okay,
out.
man.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
We got some tournament news coming up. We got Fresno Frenzy 2 coming up in Fresno, California, September 22nd, 23rd. We got the Fall Dave & Buster's Irvine, California tournament, October 13th, and the Valkyrie Dimension online tournament that's for girls. It's September 14th through October 21st, so that's going to be starting soon.
Yeah. So lots of ways to get involved in the community.
I think for info for Valkyrie, I think they have a URL, like they have a domain,
it's
right?
just
ValkyrieDimension.com.
yeah. If you go to ValkyrieDimension.com or look up
Yeah.
Valkyrie Dimension on Facebook and Twitter, everywhere,
Great.
all the rules and stuff are up there in English and in Japanese.
Perfect.
So,
And
Yeah,
then
so-
for Irvine and Fresno, I think we're using Facebook events. Is that
Yep.
the best way to search for those?
search
Great.
for Fresno Frenzy 2 DDR tournament.
Awesome.
I'm not 100% sure about the Irvine one, but
It's on there too.
it's on there somewhere.
Save the date.
Yep. So moving on to Tap Set of the Week. Because there's a new Pawn song, Pawn's kind of divisive. Some people like Pawn, some people don't. Yeah. So in honor of that, I'm going to recommend Emera, which is I think probably one of the better Pawn songs, and very fun Expert 16.
We've talked about Emera on the show before.
Yeah,
it's
very fun.
200 or 300 times.
Challenge 17. So
Pawn.
give it a shot. I mean, do you have a better suggestion?
Yeah, this is a DDR event in which participants must embark on a special summer campaign. So that will be my song addition to the set of the week.
So many summer songs.
And my pick for the week is not really a summer song, but it's based on a tweet that I made recently that got a lot of traction.
The song based on the tweet.
I was saying how the system music, the menu music in DDR A, after all this time, it still slaps. So I'm going to have to go with EDSM, or Electronic Dance System Music.
It's electric dance system.
Oh, excuse me, yeah, electric dance system music. The chart is okay.
It's great. What are you talking
pretty
about?
difficult.
It's so good.
Yeah. I mean,
It's like one of the hardest
I mean,
13s, I think.
Like Kyle was just saying, though, that sometimes you have to sacrifice, even if the chart's not great, if you like the song a lot, you'll still play it.
It's true,
So,
yeah. It actually has some very tricky stops that you are probably not going to get on the first time.
It actually does.
You have to play it quite a few times in order to get it.
And EDM is perfect for summer.
That's true.
All the festivals and stuff.
So that's our tap set of the week. For this episode, you can tweet your scores at us using hashtag tap set of the week.
Or at SF_evolved.
Yeah, and we'll go through and shout you out, retweet you.
Good luck out there.
Yeah, so again, thank you to Kyle Ward.
And thanks for giving us questions for the Kyle Ward interview.
Yeah. Fortunately, we couldn't get to everything, but hopefully we'll be able to have Kyle back at some point for round 2.
I mean,
Or you can ask him yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that too. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was pretty nice to hear that he was a fan too.
Yeah.
That'll make it easy to get him back.
That was a surprise. So I think that'll do it for this episode of the Aero Panel. So as always, thanks for listening, and thank you for playing.